Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us in this episode of X Raised, where knowledge meets inspiration in the intricate dance of industry evolution. My name is Miles, and I'm here to spotlight once again a knowledge shaper and the quiet powerhouse, redefining how business is done across the globe. Imagine this: you're building a house. But instead of checking if your builders have the right tools or training, you simply hope for the best. Well, it sounds like a disaster waiting to happen, right? Well, the same goes for businesses that overlook competence management. And today we're diving straight into that essential foundation with someone who has made it his life's work. We're privileged to have a pioneer in the world of ISO certification and training with over 40 years of experience helping organizations not only understand what competence means, but how to build it, measure it, and elevate it. He leads ACI Global, an internationally ISO certified educational training and personal certification provider that helps individuals and organizations worldwide achieve excellence through accelerating continuous improvement. Their team has built a legacy around one central truth, and we were talking about this earlier. People are an organization's most powerful asset. So, without further delay, I'm excited to welcome back the Managing Director and CEO of ACI Global and e-Quip, Ian Erskine. Hi, Ian.
And welcome again.
Welcome back.
Yes, welcome again, and welcome to all our listeners. And yes, it was wonderful to hear that you had a lovely weekend, and I hope everyone else who's listening enjoyed their weekends as well. Because as we both discussed many times, family time is most important. And yes, it builds up that confidence to make us want to go to work.
Uh-huh.
And yes, and this episode's again, they're all very important, but this basically just following from your introduction, that is so pertinent because quite often that is something that we just come to expect. And I think partly this is due to when someone is inducted and onboarded into the organization. That's an obvious thing where you would mentor the person into their roles and check their competencies and things like that. But over a given period of time, that seems to then fall off. And that's why the ISO 10015 standard is so important, because it puts guidelines, gives organisations non-mandatory, they are, right? Guidelines so that they can actually develop a competency framework with programs and skill assessments in place to ensure that their people are always at the top of their game and achieving high achiever status.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much for giving our audience a sneak peek, Ian. What a pleasure to have you here again. So, as you've said, today we're kicking off this episode with a focus on the standard that talks about competence management. It's going to be about developing the capability to stay competitive, resilient, and of course, human centered in an ever evolving landscape. So, let's set the scene with the foundation. Competence can mean different things to different businesses, right? In the context of ISO 10015 2019, how should organizations begin thinking about competence needs beyond just ticking qualifications off a list?
Well, I think it goes back to the very start again. It goes back to the very start of a person's employment. Uh, you know, there's got to be a significant amount of planning done. And it goes without saying that it really goes to the plan, do, check, act process, which is apparent in all ISO standards, right? So the organisation needs to be right at the top of their game in reference to planning, and it needs to be the competence levels of each person needs to be developed individually, because each person has individual specific tasks to undertake. And that's where it becomes oh so important that you've got to do that planning. You've got to look at those tasks and ensure the skills are there, right? But above all, you've got to have a program in place that comes back and revisits those skills on an ongoing basis.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the most important reasons why we do this is there has to be an understanding that as people, as ourselves within an organisation, We're all human, and yes, we tend to make mistakes now and again, right? And again, this is why it's so important that we do that planning, we get the assessments in place so that there is guidelines where senior managers can then, on an ongoing basis, do their skills assessment to ensure that they are up to date at all times.
Right. That's a solid shift from old school thinking, skills as strategy. Again, not just a checkbox. And competence isn't built in a vacuum. How should companies assess the external and internal factors, like regulations, culture, or business strategy that impact what competence really looks like within their unique environment?
Yes, and again, this is a very, very interesting question. And again, you show your true professionalism in looking at the topic and developing the questions.
Thank you.
And this is one where there has to be a fine line. And for argument's sake, when we're looking at external issues, we look at um, industry and legal guidelines, which we all need to follow within our jobs and our positions. Now, you've heard me talk about it many times. The first and critical one is primary duty of care. We
Uh,
all have a primary duty of care to do the right thing all the time. Okay, so there needs to be within the training platform and the programs developed, there needs to be an ongoing revisiting of legal and statutory requirements for each employee. So number one is primary duty of care, right?
mhm.
Now, let's just look at specific codes. And as an external auditor, quite often I will say to people, you don't have to know the codes off by heart, but you have to understand those codes are put in place for your own protection, right?
Mhm.
And just consider this for an example, a ladder, climbing up and down a ladder. Now, whilst yes, it makes common sense that the two legs of the ladder are firmly and evenly balanced, but it's also advised that the ladder at the top is anchored somehow,
Right.
right? Now, quite often, and I've done it myself, right? And I've linked the ladder up at a good angle, climbed up the ladder, then I've stopped to think, and I said, no, you need to have that ladder anchored up in the gutter or somewhere like that, so that it can be secure. Now, there's legislative and statutory codes which outline the proper use of a ladder, right? And another one is proper use of handling, for argument's sake, LPG, liquid petroleum gas, and the cylinders, the barbecue cylinders, right? There's a little code out there which ensures that when you're carrying a full 9 kg cylinder, when you go to lift it up, you have to remember that you're lifting 9 kgs, that's quite a heavy lift. You have to bend your knees and lift it correctly. But
Mhm.
again, these are the things. So you need to be aware of the external factors, right? Now, the internal factors, they're incredibly important because we, as employees, we all need to not only abide, but we need to assimilate the organisation's mission and their vision.
Yeah.
Because if, as an employee, we have separate mission and visions for ourselves going in the opposite direction of the company, sooner or later there will be a disconnect.
Yeah.
So your competency programs need to align with internal, external issues. Now, there are many others, right? Now, these are outlined within the standard, right? And again, I employ organisations to get hold of this standard, right, and use this to develop their competency programs, of which they can get guidance from ACI Global on our portal. And it's actually just reminded me that we actually need to have our competency program and plan up there so people can download it as part of our resource library. So that's something I will do in the very near future.
Mhm. Always going back to the core purpose of the organization, which makes sense. Context defines what's relevant and impactful. So, why don't we zoom in from the bigger picture? How can teams and groups within an organization, Ian, identify the competencies they specifically need to function effectively, especially when team dynamics, objectives, and roles vary so widely?
I think it's very important when we're talking about teams, your competency programs and processes don't necessarily need to concentrate on the strengths of employees. They need to concentrate on our weaknesses. So the organisation needs to have developed a SWOT analysis on all their employees, and that will tend to highlight their strengths, their weaknesses, their opportunities for improvement, and also their threats. And it's interesting, let's just drill on the threat. The threat can be as simple as, oh, I understand that Ian and his wife, they're about to have a young child. Okay. Now, what you need as an organisation, you need to look at that and say, okay, the baby's going to be born. Ian's going to need to be able to have some time with his family, with his wife to bring that
Mhm.
child up. Doesn't necessarily impact on the business, but there are things that we all need to be aware of within the workplace. And that
Mhm.
needs to be noted within the competency training plan.
Uh-huh.
Children of the employee, right? So, a person could have 4 or 5 children, okay? Now, that does impact on an employee, whether you like it or not. And we have to, our organisation as a whole needs to look at this on each individual employee's basis to make sure that's noted in the training plan, right?
Mhm.
And that way you will get the best out of it. So that threat can then be turned into a positive, right? Now, the other could be, the weaknesses could be, oh, okay, so, and I use myself as an example again, Ian tends to have a problem with listening. Okay.
Mhm.
Now, this is a common problem with all employees and all people, actually,
I
is
agree.
because we tend to have a fixed idea when we ask a question, we have a fixed idea as to what we expect the person we're asking the question to for them to come back. But no, you have to have like a blank mind. We've got
Mhm.
to take that in. Yes,
Mhm.
when the person has answered that question, yes, you can then come back and say, well, I politely disagree, right? Because I think this and this and this is still not in place, right? Or on the other side, you can then go back and say, wow, that's a fantastic answer, well answered. That's something I can actually take on board, or our organisation can take on board as a positive action for all of us. But
Mhm.
you won't get that if you don't have true listening, right?
Yeah.
Now, the next thing that we need to concentrate on is actively seeing and allowing your eyes to take in what's been in front of them, but above all, allow your brain, your intuition, to tell you what you are actually seeing. Because quite often, when we do our risk assessments and we talk about foreseeable risk, quite often it's the simple little things which we miss. We see, we walk past, and when I get people to go back and think when they first noticed it, right, they'll come back and say, well, yes, I did notice that and I was going to do something, but I walked past it the first time, then the second, third, fourth, and then all of a sudden your brain's a very clever thing, right? It turns off and says, oh, blow you, I won't remind you in future. And then an accident or incident happens. So we have to truly actively concentrate on seeing and absorbing what we're seeing. They're the two critical things that we need to look at when we're bringing people into a team environment. Okay,
Mhm.
above all the weaknesses, right? And then one of the other core ones are seeing and asking those questions.
Yeah. And I love that. It's not about everyone knowing everything, but about building teams where everyone brings something indispensable to the table. Also, I like you reminding everyone about unbiased mode, active listening, and understanding what the speaker is actually talking about. It's
Yes.
quite hard for
It
many,
is.
but I'm
Yes.
sure it's not that hard if you keep on practicing. And it's, tell me about it. And it's essential to know not just your strengths, but also your weaknesses, as you mentioned. And when we drill down to the individual level, Ian, what are some critical yet often overlooked personal competencies that organizations should be paying more attention to, particularly when it comes to future leadership and resilience?
Well, quite often we tend to, as an organisation, as I said, we concentrate on building up a person's competencies. So you do the SWOT analysis, you look at their weaknesses, but
Mhm.
above all, you need to, what's the word for it, foster and encourage a person's strengths. And you need to be able to have a culture within the business where people can continually drive to exceed their expectations so that they can continually perform higher and higher. They continually lift, or as we say, climb to the extra peak and keep climbing. That's our motto on our website. And we've developed that as from the inspirational movie, Julie Andrews' Sound of Music. And I employ now are employing my customers, okay, as an inspirational tool to actually get people to go and watch that movie, come back the next morning or come back on the Monday after the weekend, right? And let people know what the true message of that was. Because the inspiration of that was, yes, if you get knocked down, pick yourself back up and keep climbing. But for people to be able to continue that climb, they have to have an organisation, which is a training provider, for argument's sake, like ACI Global, which will back them all the way. And for argument's sake, we have lifelong learning, we have ISO skills assessments, recommendation of prior learning, recognition of prior learning, sorry, RPL, and current competence. And we
Mhm.
have heaps of other tools that we provide for people when they're doing their training to encourage them to continue to strive harder, continue to drive to be a high achiever. Because
Yeah.
if all the people within an organisation are driving and rowing the boat in the same unison, they will get there faster. Within the organisation, they will continue to get traction and continue to achieve sustained success. And that's ultimately what the ISO 10015 2019 standard, when it talks about competence management and people development, that's what it is all about.
Uh-huh. Right. Emotional intelligence, staying calm in chaos, and the ability to collaborate. Those are golden, Ian, and probably the hardest to train without the right environment. I mean, it wouldn't cost us a lot if we encourage the strengths of the people around us. And that's bottom line with the goal of being high achievers, as you said. And
Yes.
once those competence needs are identified, how should organizations go about documenting, reviewing, and continuously updating them, especially in today's fast shifting business environment where roles evolve faster than org charts can keep up?
Well, this is a very important one, and it's becoming all the more critical as we move through and better understand the ramifications of not only world events but also technology, AI, automated decision making, and things like that. We employ all organisations to develop their competency programs, but within their programs, they need to have a log of each person's skills and each person's verification of that skill. Now, as determined by the complexity of the task,
Mhm.
you would expect that a person would have their competency verified and validated more than likely on an annual or biannual basis, right?
Mhm.
But for argument's sake, if that was a person that was actually developing components for software to go into a Boeing jet, you would more than likely want to be able to verify the person's skills that are actually putting those components together. You would probably want to verify that possibly on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, right?
Mhm.
But the most important thing is to develop a log of those skills, right? So it's a skills log, and it becomes a twofold thing. So that is a developed log, and the employee needs to be able to have, and this is where ACI Global comes in. We develop that log within e-Quip for them. If they do leave and go somewhere else, right, they can actually take that log with them to another organisation, and they don't have to, for argument's sake, start all again. And it
Mm-hmm.
can also be used as a positive onboarding and induction process to the organisation, because as you've heard me say many, many times, when you're putting a CV together, you must be able to develop and show that you can add value to that organisation.
Uh-huh.
So the skills log, of which you can carry with you, right? You can provide that to the new organisation, and they know beforehand. Wow, I know for argument's sake what Joe can bring into the organisation. There's his skill logs, all been verified by little video clips and manual assessments and so forth. And that's what I employ people to do.
Mm-hmm. So development or progress journaling,
Yes,
something
yes,
like
oh yes, beautifully put. I like that.
that. Because set and forget doesn't work anymore. I mean,
No.
I can attest to that. I forget a lot of things, and we need more to learn, to adapt, and to evolve. The cycle baked right into the strategy. And this is such an insightful conversation, insightful breakdown, Ian. If there's one thing our audience can take away today, I guess it's that competence management is a performance strategy. And ISO 10015 2019 gives us the roadmap to get it right, from organizational goals all the way to individual growth. So, thank you so much again, Ian, for walking us through this beautiful topic and why and the what and the how of competence in this episode. Thank you.
And thanks again, and thank you very much for the viewers listening. And yes, and we look forward to our next section of this debate in reference to competence management and people development. We'll be looking at the next stage of this next week.
Uh-huh.
So I look forward to getting together again, Miles, and
Yes, I'll work on the
enjoy,
questions.
yes, enjoy the rest of your week and enjoy the coming weekend. I know you've only just started, but I
Yeah.
seem to have a feeling that weeks seem to go quite quickly.
Yeah, it's gonna be a great week. Let's claim.
Yes, yes.
Thank you, Ian, Dito. To our audience, if you're ready to elevate your team's competence the right way, Ian's team at ACI Global have a full suite of ISO certified training programs that can help you do just that. So better head over to aciglobal.com.au now. And as always, thank you for staying with us. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and keep the inspiration going. Catch me and Ian again in our next episode. This has been your host, Miles. Stay focused and inspired with X Raised.